I am here with my dear friend, Dr. Richard Scott, GP. Hello, Richard.
And it's good to be back.
Yes. Now, we have been, in the last couple of weeks while you've been away, we did our series on caffeine because a few Sundays ago, I lost track of the number of days now, we were doing Family Focus on a Sunday, and Joe said, "Oh, caffeine's really good. Why don't you do something on caffeine?" I said, "Well, we have done. Richard's away for 2 weeks, so we replayed that." But I kind of said, we should have titled it, "Why Caffeine is Awesome. God Made It, Isn't He Great? We Like Caffeine." Could have been the title, but wasn't.
Well, funny enough, I had a church minister friend of mine round yesterday, and he said, I said, "Well, yeah, would you like a cup of tea? It's middle of the afternoon. No, I'll have a coffee." And they said, "Oh, I better not do that." And I said, "Well, how many have you had today?" Well, this will be number 3 or 4. I said, "That's okay. I've done a talk on caffeine. You can have your fourth coffee." It was only instant. So I was able to put his mind at rest. That fourth coffee's okay. Don't go to any more about that. That's enough for today.
As long as it's not 2 pints at a time, then it's probably
Exactly.
fine. Right, we have got some questions that have come in, which always makes me excited. This is to do with red hair.
All right.
So, do people with red hair really have a higher pain threshold during childbirth? Generally, I also seem to remember that red-haired people need more pain relief when having dental work done because sometimes it doesn't work. Is this actually true?
So in a sense, you're saying in one area that they've got a higher pain threshold, but in dental areas they've got a lower pain
Well,
threshold.
I think it was that it doesn't work. The anaesthetic doesn't
The
seem
answer
to.
is that, well, now that is very specialist. I can't see why, but that's something I'd very happily look up. So I wouldn't want to give you a wrong answer on that one. Logically, I wouldn't understand why that should be, but you have to look things up. So thank you. I will look it up. Red hair and pain thresholds.
Yes, well, the one,
Note
the
to self.
dental one, I've heard that one before, but I have no clue whether anaesthetic doesn't work with people that have got red hair. Because I'm thinking, well, how can it even interact differently because of the colour of hair? But I mean, I've heard it so many times, that particular one. But the other one was fascinating. About is it a higher pain threshold? I don't know where someone read
Thank
that
you.
one.
I will come back to you on that one next week. I mean, I love being challenged and stimulated. Never been asked that question before. So there we go. Thank you. I'll come back to you.
Fine. Another one that came in. What are the biggest dangers of insufficient sleep? Does it really affect memory?
Well, yes, it does seem to be very bad for us in many ways. Prolonged insufficient sleep certainly increases our risk of dying. It's bad for our hearts. Memory, I've read stuff recently that says absolutely it can lead to reduced memory. I'd have to look it up, but I think probably it's linked to dementia. I'm pretty sure I've read that in the past. It's generally pretty bad for us. Now, that said, of course, it's very interesting because you have your famous people like Margaret Thatcher who could survive on 4 hours sleep a night. But so for her, that was sufficient, whereas it might not be for other people. We talked before about how, on average, people need between 6 and 8, usually 7 to 8 hours of sleep. So I think within an individual, if you're not getting enough, for Margaret Thatcher, it would be less than 4. For most people, it would be less than 7 or 8. Then it does seem to affect us. We know that we can think less well. Our tempers can be frayed. It can affect relationships. But also, I think it's known to be physically and mentally bad for us, and even to the extent of reducing our lifespan. So yes, impaired sleep needs looking at. It's not just unpleasant; it's dangerous. Go and see a doctor.
Right, here's one from Peter. There is so much discussion on how we should avoid sugar in our food as much as possible. But is sugar really that bad? Are there actually any benefits to sugar? Or should we always treat sugar like the plague?
The plague, is it always a bad guy? Well, no. And in fact, our brains need sugar. Our brains work almost entirely on sugar. The
Didn't
rest of
know
our
that.
body can work on other substances which can be broken down, but brains need sugar. So we do need a little bit of sugar. Now, we do get some of that sugar naturally by breaking down other substances, but a tiny amount of sugar will certainly not do you any harm. And we have quite a reserve in our pancreas to produce insulin, which reduces our blood sugar. So when you take a sugar hit, the pancreas releases insulin. It brings the sugar down to a normal level. Obviously, in diabetes, what happens is that we wear our pancreases out, particularly type 2 diabetes, if you've had too much sugar over many, many years, and the pancreas literally becomes worn out, and then it can't produce the insulin, and then up goes your blood sugar, and then the dangers of high blood sugar chronically are well known. But no, a little bit of sugar is okay, so we shouldn't demonize it. I think God put it into the world for a reason. It's just that as with everything, we need to be careful. You do particularly need to be careful if you are diabetic, and not least if you are a type 1 diabetic, then I'm afraid sugar does become a bad guy. But for most of the rest of us, it's absolutely okay in small amounts.
I have a follow-on question to Peter's question, which seems like an obvious one. But before we go to that, so insulin is your body's way of what sort of bringing down the sugar level,
regulating blood sugar. Yeah. So in response to a meal where the sugar is either taken in directly or it's broken down into sugar, then the body releases insulin to control the sugar level. Absolutely.
Right. And then the obvious question, I think, which Peter didn't ask, is there any difference between brown sugar, white sugar, soft sugar? I mean, are they all equal, the same, just different colors?
The refined sugars are absorbed more quickly and thus are more likely to give you a sugar surge. So other sugars are better for us. They're still sugar, but they're more slowly released, more slowly absorbed, and are therefore of reduced danger.
And then one that came in a couple of days ago, up to what age do people still have growth spurts? And I seem to remember there is a difference between growth spurts in females and males, that men can have growth spurts later than women. But over to you.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're absolutely right. So, I mean, female puberty tends to start slightly earlier, but usually by 18, the physical growth spurts have finished in most people. I might say that one thing that's come into the public domain a lot more recently is how our brains are still developing. So we may not be physically growing any taller or wider, but it takes till about 25 until we're mature cerebrally in our brains. So brain maturity takes longer, quite a lot longer than physical maturity in terms of skeletal growth. But usually by about 18, the growth spurts are over. You can see exceptions, maybe 19, 20, one or two people, but for most people, you are where you're going to be by 18.
But what happens with the ears then? Why do they keep on getting bigger?
There are three organs, and I can never remember the third one: ears, men's prostate, and the third one, which I can never remember, grow throughout life. And yeah, that's a bit of a mystery, isn't it? Why do we turn into elephants as we grow older? And men in particular. I'm not quite sure why that's the case, but it is. It's not your skeleton, it's not your bones, of course, because ears are cartilage, skin, a little bit of fat. So it's nothing to do with our bones. It's cartilage and fat.
Just that last one came to me, as these things do come to me. So if you've got any more questions for Richard, you can do. We're going to move on to the topic in just a moment that is brought. But if you want to know anything about something you've seen in the news, or you're just curious about your own body, what's going on, what is this normal, you can email us hello@pure247radio.org, hello@pure247radio.org, and we will ask Richard as anonymously as we can, of course. Richard, over to you with this week's topic.
And I'd just like to say about the red hair, I've got a wonderful friend at work who's one of our secretaries who's very red-haired, and she always talks about red hair being her superpower. So when I look into red hair, I'm going to come back with quite a bit more on red hair, and she may be right, and I want to know, tell me about pain thresholds, and I'll look into these things, and then I'll challenge her, and she'll probably tell me more. So thank you, just once again, thank you for the question on red hair. That's got me going for next time. But this time, as you know, Andy, I like to try and bring encouraging stories or challenging stories that I've read in the paper, either Christian press or secular press. This one came from a normal newspaper, and it was about an extraordinary woman who happens to be a doctor, a cancer consultant from the Midlands, Lucy Gossage. And she's a runner. And my goodness, is she a runner? She ran for 87 hours last week, taking just 3 hours off, as you do if you're extraordinary. Starting off in -8 through snowstorms in the dead of night, up hills. This is the Pennine Way she was running, which is 268 miles, which she did in 87 hours. And the ups and downs are more than climbing Mount Everest. Oh my goodness, in terrible conditions. This is Britain's toughest ultra marathon, from Derbyshire, Peak District, to the Yorkshire Dales, ending at the Scottish borders. The conditions were Arctic, as I mentioned, so tough. And of course, competitors in this thing aren't going to be wimps, but half dropped out by halfway. Snow drifts up to your waist. Can you imagine walking through this, let alone running? Which then turned to slush and bog. Sounds terrible. You're carrying all your own kit. You're having to go through checkpoints. She covered 70 miles a day. If you do 268 miles divided by 3 and a bit days, 70 miles a day, resting only 3 3/4 hours. Oh my goodness. And she won the race for women. Why? Well, she's a cancer consultant. It was at a good cause, raising money for a thing called Move Against Cancer, a small charity she founded to get cancer patients more active and get in the running or walking. I have to say, and I'm a runner, but not like that. It made me tired just reading this. But of course, cancer's topical. We've got the two royals affected at the moment, the King and the Princess of Wales. I myself had bowel cancer in 2011. And I wrote a book on it, God, I've Got Cancer. And at the moment, I'm doing some cancer studying for my annual appraisal. As a GP, you need to do an annual appraisal. And I'm focusing on cancer, just getting more up to date with symptoms and signs, so that we can, not miss any of the dreaded disease as it comes through. And I think what came through this article, that was an article about her in the Times, was that when I'm reading it alongside my book on spotting cancer for GPs, exercise comes up regularly in my book, as well as in her article, as a very important way to help prevent this terrible disease. It's partly through losing weight, because we know obesity is definitely a risk factor for cancer, but exercise seems to have an independent effect. So why am I bringing it to the radio today? Well, I think we've looked a bit at sort of indirectly at exercise in the past, and of course we know it's good for our heart and lungs. We've talked about it being good for mental health, but just so that your listeners can know, it's also protective against cancer. Some people will do park runs. I've done 3 of them actually. I don't like running at 9 in the morning. I'm more a late afternoon person, because that's when I get going better. I get going mentally in the morning, but physically in the afternoon. But these park runs, which run at 9 in the morning, and many people do it, don't they, as a sort of endpoint from couch to 5K over the course of maybe 3 months. And then followed by decent breakfast, including coffee, of course. But just that sense of, maybe just remember that exercise really is very, very good for us. And I think God, I'm not going to be particularly spiritual today, but God gave us legs for a reason. And it's not just to sit at our desks. We need to use our legs. And here's another reason to get active beyond our sort of cardiovascular health, beyond our mental health. It keeps cancer at bay as well. So, thought for the day.
Do you know, the thing that struck me right from the start is with what she's doing in her role, is there's leading by example, which is always a good thing to do, and then there's wherever on earth level she is of leading by example, because I don't like running at all.
Yeah, sure.
But 87 hours. I mean,
you can't even imagine it. You can't imagine it. I mean, when I did the London Marathon once, which frankly I did not enjoy. It's too far from me. 3 or 4 miles, I'm reasonably at. 26 miles, that's not human. This is someone who's doing almost 3 marathons a day for 3 days with virtually no sleep, carrying kit as well. Oh, how does that even begin to happen? Extraordinary.
Much respect. I mean, her patients can't say, I'm tired, I can't do it, because it's not going to work as an excuse, is it?
I mean, it's fantastic, but we're not saying turn into Lucy. That she is an extraordinary woman. But what I think it's very good to lead as an example. But it was just funny when I read 2 things at once, an article and I'm studying something. It's like God has given me a little prompt to say to people, "Hey, listen, come on, this is something you could do very easily." Okay, you may not necessarily like it, although most people, when they start exercise and start running, do get into it. For me, if this had said, because I'm not a swimmer, you need to swim and it'll help keep cancer at bay, I'd be thinking, that's not naturally me. But okay, the benefits are there. I'll do some swimming. Fortunately, I'm a runner, so that it's easy for me. So I understand if it's not, but this is what the science is showing. And there we are. I put it to our listeners.
I have cycled for a long, long time, around heart issues and health issues that sort of waned the last few years. But even at my fittest, I'm not sure I could have done as many miles as she ran as intensely. Even when I was much fitter on a bicycle, I don't think I could have done that level. That is much respect.
She's extraordinary. She's clearly extraordinary, and I'm just using it as a nice story, a feel-good story, but as an entree, if you like, to what I was reading alongside in my cancer book. And there it is. She's encouraging people as a cancer consultant to exercise because it's good for you in cancer. That's for patients who've already got cancer, but my cancer book is saying it's a preventative as well. It's good. it's good as a treatment, but it's also a preventative. So yeah, let's think about it.
I always think about some of these because positive thinking goes around, and my sort of thing is, well, yeah, but if you've broken your leg, positive thinking isn't going to help much. You need a splint and a doctor and probably a hospital and some, help. But
sure.
positive thinking is not completely redundant and useless, because actually a positive mental attitude helps. And I know a lot of people who go, well, whatever exercise it is, often at the start you're thinking, do you know, I'd rather sit at home. I'll just have another round of coffee. But actually, once you get into it, you do then feel better, because that's the endorphins, isn't it?
It's the endorphins. It is very good for us. And I had a bit of an injury last few weeks, and I had a sort of half a run yesterday. Felt so much better, and my leg wasn't too bad afterwards. It was a double win. So yeah, I would just say to people, this is what we're learning, and we'd be foolish not to take it on board.
Well, like you say, God's given us two legs for a reason, and it's not just to operate pedals.
No.
As amazing as that is, that's a really good feel-good story. I mean, it's encouraging, isn't it? What somebody can do. Not for me, but that's okay.
Yeah,
that's fine.
It's there, and it may look. And she's not saying only running; she's saying exercise. And as the cancer book is saying, exercise doesn't narrow it down to running. It might be a bike, it might be a swim. So yeah, just a few thoughts.
Get moving, basically.
Get moving. And that's what her thing was called, wasn't it? Move Against Cancer. Small charity to get cancer patients active. And it included walking, by the way. Walking is also included.
We used to have, many years ago, a decade ago, there was a GP surgery, and one of the things they had was a walking club, but it was much more than that, because one of the doctors then, on their lunch break, I think they used to alternate between the GPs with the nurses helping as well. And they would take some of the people on a walk, because some of the folk were a bit nervous because they're a bit older. Maybe they're a bit scared to go out. There's we'll go out as a group. So they all came to the GP surgery. It's got a car park. We know where it is. And they would take them on a walk, and they had different grades of walk for, the 18, 90-year-olds. Okay, we're not going to do a 10-mile sprint. And then if you're a bit fitter, we'll go a bit further and faster. But I just thought, what a great way of really engaging with people in such a helpful, positive way.
My last church did this for people who weren't that active and needed the encouragement that other people provide. Once a week, Tuesday lunchtime, we're going to go for a walk, early lunchtime, and then finish off with a sort of sandwich lunch in church. Great idea.
It's fab. Churches listening, do something good, help your people out.
Absolutely.
It's not always about reading the Bible on a Sunday, it's getting out into God's nature as well.
Amen.
Richard, thank you. If you've got any questions, thoughts, comments, you can get in touch with us. Email hello@pure247radio.org, hello@pure247radio.org, and we'll put your questions to Richard, or any hot topic issues you've seen in the news. Richard, thank you, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Andy.
Did you know Pure 24/7 Radio has a shop? Well, we do. You can buy merchandise while supporting the work that we do here. Simply head over to www.pure247radio.org/shop. That's www.pure247radio.org/shop.